Well, it's that time of the month again, and by that I'm of course talking about Q&A time. You guys left quite a few interesting questions for me to answer, so let's get into them. So the first question is a serious question. Why does HP never send out review units to you? Literally every other brand like ASUS, Gigabyte, and MSI have no problem sending you their units for testing. So, yeah, this has basically been a battle that's going on for years that I've pretty much given up on at this point, to be honest. So essentially it comes down to they just don't want to send me review units. It's not like they're saying no, they're just really hard to get in contact with. So the way a lot of these companies handle review units is I don't just go out and contact HP directly. For smaller companies that might work, but for big, huge companies that have a global presence like HP, generally what will happen is they'll have a PR company that manages everything on their behalf. That's just so I guess they don't have to get into the nitty-gritty details of, arranging shipping and sending stuff out, getting it sent back, all that kind of boring work, I suppose. So they have different PR companies in different parts of the world. Actually, I'm not sure if that's the case with HP, but that's definitely the case with a lot of others. And I have found out who HP use in my country, and I've reached out multiple times to try and get in contact with them. They've just never given me any replies. So there's not really much I can do. I mean, there is. I've tried calling them. I've left multiple emails. I even actually met with a couple of people from there at an event in Sydney a few months ago. I gave them my business card. They seemed interested in, getting in contact with me and possibly giving me some review units, but nothing ever came of that. And every time I try and reach out, absolutely nothing happens. So at this point, I can't really do much more. I've tried everything I can. So if anyone from HP is watching, by all means do get in contact. I'm more than happy to test out your stuff. A lot of people are asking for it. But here in Australia, the fact is, a lot of HP laptops, they just cost a lot of money here. And it would be really hard for me to just go out and keep buying those units over and over again. So it would be much better if they could send them over. And, if that happens, great. But for now, I'm kind of stuck and there's not really much I can do. Okay, the next question seems to be something quite a lot of people are interested in. The ASUS Zephyrus G14. Basically, when and how much. So when I was at CES and I saw the G14, they weren't actually able to provide a price to me at that time, at least. It sounds like other people have gotten some prices. It sounds like under $1,500 for the starting price. But, I have no idea if that's correct. And I also don't know what specs that's for. So we'll probably have to wait and see. As for when, well, I guess technically all AMD have said publicly is Ryzen 4000 is Q1 2020. So technically anytime before March. And before March or during March is what I have heard from other sources, but I have no clue at the moment. And it's all going to come down to, can't say it without getting demonetized, but there's a particular virus at the moment that is causing issues with suppliers. So let's just leave it at that. That could affect things, and yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But hopefully March and starting at under $1,500. So the next question is asking me my favorite laptop. And am I interested in AMD's Ryzen 4000? Well, yes, I can definitely say straight away I'm interested in AMD's Ryzen 4000. Really keen to get them in for testing. Don't have any yet, still waiting. Hopefully not too long, but again, they did say Q1 2020, so anytime between now and the end of March, guess we'll see. As for favorite laptop, I suppose it depends what I'm using it for, really. I really like the Gigabyte Aero 15X, which I'm still using, which is what I'm using right now to read out these questions. I only take it with me if I go out and travel and I need to edit 4K video. Otherwise, I'll take something smaller. I've actually got a 12.5-inch Xiaomi Mi Air, which I've been meaning to review. And I like that because it's nice and portable. It's very low spec, so you can't really do much, but for just like browsing the internet, watching YouTube videos, replying to comments, that kind of thing, it gets the job done. If I was like after something to upgrade to today that could still edit 4K video that's fairly thin, decent screen, metal body, good battery life, SD card, probably the Electronics Mag 15, or here in Australia, the Aftershock Vapor 15 Pro. Those are pretty good. Maybe the Gigabyte Aero 15 OLED. Again, that OLED screen is pretty nice, and also similar specs, similar features. So those are probably what I would be looking at. I guess in terms of gaming laptop, for the price, I always say the Acer Helios 300 or Lenovo Wi-Fi 40 are pretty good for what they offer. But yeah, that's a few. Hopefully that answers the question. Do you still have time to play games? And if so, what games are you really enjoying at the moment? So the honest answer is no, not really. I kind of get through maybe one or two games a year. The fact is, I just don't have time. I'm too busy working flat out on the channel. The last game I played was Control. I think it was October. Oh, that's right. Yep, I basically spent my birthday weekend just playing Control, got through it in a couple of days. It was really fun. Before that, I probably hadn't really played a game fully through since I think it was like Watch Dogs 2. I really liked that as well. Again, that's an older title, so hopefully that gives you an idea of just how often I get in and actually play games myself. So I'm obviously always benchmarking them all the time, but it doesn't really count as playing. Yeah, basically just no time. I'd love to have more time, but I guess I prioritize the channel over fun. Okay, next question. There are a lot of issues surrounding Razer, ASUS, and other companies about their customer service, returns and warranty, repairs, and concerns with faults over their laptops and products. How can I be so sure as to what laptop to buy from what company with so much discrepancy? It's a good question. I mean, if you're spending thousands of dollars, you want your machine to work for years to come, right? That's completely fair enough. I get it. The problem I have as someone that reviews these machines is I get a review unit, and generally I'm only allowed to keep it for like 2 weeks. And then it has to go back. So I obviously can't really do like long-term testing if I only have it for a couple of weeks. I spend a lot of time doing the best I can to find out everything I can, but those long-term issues that come up over time, like with MSI and hinge problems, that type of thing, it's not really something I can find out about unless it presents itself in that initial testing window. So I could go into depth about the Gigabyte Aero 15X I'm using here because I've used it for more than a year at this point. And, that would be good information. I might actually do a follow-up video on it with all of the problems I've had over time. But yeah, with like Razer, obviously, I think they've gotten a lot of people online have, come out and said they've had problems with their products. So first off, there are always going to be there's going to be problems with products, regardless of how good the product is. Nothing is perfect and things are going to fail over time. That's just the way it is. It also depends on things like how people are actually treating their laptops. So like, one person might take their laptop around with them and take good care of it, open it carefully, put it in a case, that kind of thing. Whereas another person might just tear the lid open when they need to use it, chuck it in their bag with a bunch of other stuff. So, it really comes down to the use case to some degree as well. But as for like systematic problems with different companies, yeah, it's really hard for me to work out over time. It would be interesting if I could go through and like contact support from all of these companies and find out the experience. But even if I do that, I think it's going to differ just between region as well. Like, I think the support's probably outsourced to a lot of different regions for different companies worldwide. Some of them might have a centralized place that all of the support queries go through, but it's really going to vary by company, and it would take a lot of work to do something like that well. I'll keep it in mind. If I come up with anything I can do, that would be interesting. But as for like long-term testing, I think it would be really good if like larger channels it appears that they get to keep these laptops, unlike smaller guys like me. So if they can keep the laptops and use them long-term, it would be good to see long-term testing from them. But for now, at the moment, unless I'm allowed to keep something, it's not really something I can get first-hand experience with. Is there any difference in FPS benchmarks in 15 and 17 inches of ASUS SCAR 3? Just like with the Electronics Max 15 and 17 inches. So I can't say for sure because I've never had the 17-inch version of the SCAR 3 specifically. I did ask ASUS for that after I initially reviewed the 15-inch because I was very interested in finding that out. I believe there probably will be a small difference because I think the 17-inch one has an extra heat pipe inside. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I saw a photo of that at some point. And, if there's extra cooling, then there's the potential for improved speeds, especially with the GPU, as Nvidia GPU boost relies on temperatures for boosting the clock speed higher. So yeah, potentially some improvements with the 17-inch model there. With the Max 15 and 17, you can probably work this out by looking at my 17 and 15-inch benchmarks. I do have a full dedicated video comparison coming. I think it'll come out after this Q&A though. But essentially the 17-inch version is a couple of FPS ahead. And that does sort of come down to cooling because there's thermal throttling in both of those machines, with the 2070 version at least, because they're just super powerful and, it's a thin machine, kind of expected. But yeah, the 17-inch model does come out slightly ahead there. You can probably use that as a generalization because 17-inch machines do technically have more space for cooling. But at the same time, I have opened some, and inside the internals are pretty much laid out exactly the same. Some of them don't make full use of the additional size in the 17-inch models. So in those cases, it wouldn't surprise me at all if there was no difference. So yeah, basically to summarize, there's probably no difference to a small difference, but it'll depend on the machine. Favorite football team, basketball team, favorite game, favorite tech reviewer. So I don't really follow any sport personally. As for games, I think I went through those in a previous question. Probably Control at the moment. That was pretty sweet. As mentioned, I think Watch Dogs. That's just because before I did YouTube full time, I worked as a penetration tester, so security, and that was really fun. And the game kind of did a good job of getting into like the hacker scene and hacker culture. I think they did a good job of representing that, and I'm interested to see how the new version or Watch Dogs Legion, when that comes out later this year. I'll be interested in playing that. As for tech reviewer, there's a lot of great guys out there. In terms of laptops, other smaller channels like Steven from Own or Disown, Bob of All Trades, those guys do some good stuff. Personally, I don't actually watch too many other laptop channels. I watch a lot of like desktop PC channels like Hardware Unboxed, Gamers Nexus. Channels like those are really good. I'd like to make a lot of that content myself, but my channel seems to be more laptop focused, and that's fine. I enjoy doing it. But yeah, I like watching probably more desktop PC stuff myself personally. Do you think GeForce Now, Project xCloud, or any cloud gaming will affect in some way the gaming laptop market? Look, it's reasonable to think that that'll probably happen at some point. I guess it's just a matter of when. At the same time, I think there's always going to be issues with like just delay due to this, like the speed of light at this point is actually a bottleneck with many of these online services. Some games it's not so sensitive, whereas other games like first-person shooters where, you're playing competitively, you kind of want that native performance. So I think there's probably always going to be some need for gaming laptops with discrete graphics inside, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if we kind of see that market shrink over time. Either way, I think people are still going to need something to play the laptops on. It'll probably get pretty boring if I become a channel that does like testing these online services and we just have like a generic laptop that has low specs. Either way, there's still going to be some level of hardware, however powerful that may be. So I think there'll still be reviews of components like that. But yeah, it could potentially get a bit less interesting over time. It just depends on how those services mature. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Do you know any good websites that have benchmarks for laptops? Not really. So the only one I'm really aware of is maybe there's things like User Benchmark, but those just aren't really good. User Benchmark specifically is actually kind of trash, but that's a different topic. I would like to publish my results on my own website that I recently launched, Jarrod'sTech, if you haven't seen it yet. So the problem with that is like, well, I guess it's the problem anyone has really. I should probably just publish the result in like a table or allow you to like select a dropdown and compare one laptop to another. There's just so many caveats and variables that I like noting. So when I do a video comparing like two different laptops, I'll do my very best to make them as apples to apples as possible. But if I just have like all the data I've ever collected over like the last year, I think it would be hard to fairly compare all of the like different machines. It would be good as like a rough, general thing. And I guess I could note on the page like, due to these reasons, results, might not be perfectly comparable in a fair way. But I think there's definitely room for things like this to exist. I'm not aware of any big places that do this specifically. I know Notebook Check have a range of games that have that information available. But yeah, I think it would be good to have a large website that's well known for publishing that sort of data. I just think, as mentioned, it'll be hard to do it in a fair way. Should I get an Intel and Nvidia laptop or wait a few more months to get a laptop with Ryzen 4000 series, 8-core 16-thread, and RX GPU? I'm not in a hurry at the moment. Well, if you're not in a hurry at the moment, to be honest, I'd just wait it out. At this point, Ryzen 4000 CPUs should be pretty imminent. They said Q1 2020, so technically before March. And even if there are delays due to a certain virus, I wouldn't expect maybe any more than an extra month or two. Either way, if you don't buy a machine with the new stuff, you could still get a pretty good sale on a last gen model that you might have been looking at. And apart from Ryzen, I think Intel 10th gen's probably like maybe April, May timeframe, probably before Computex. Again, probably Nvidia's super laptops as well. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, if you don't need anything in a hurry, there's so much stuff like just around the corner in the next few months. At this point, I'd just wait it out unless you really need something right now. Is it worth it to buy a Helios 300 2019 that has Core i5 and RTX 2060, or should I wait for new AMDs? Kind of similar answer to the last question. i5 is okay. Personally, I'd probably go to an i7 if I was getting the 2060. If you're playing games at higher settings or you're more GPU bound, the 2060 will give you an edge there. Even if you go i7 and 1660 Ti, I think, a couple years from now, those extra cores will probably be a bit more beneficial than the boost to the GPU. That's just my personal, opinion, I suppose. I don't know how games are going to perform in the future, but yeah, the 1660 Ti seems pretty capable at the moment. 4 cores are still pretty good, but there are some games that are starting to see benefits from more CPU power. So yeah, I guess maybe wait and see, because, again, new AMD stuff isn't too far out. Just depends if you want to wait a little bit longer or if you need something right now. How tall are you? About this tall? I think I'm like 187 centimeters, which is like 6'1", I think. I'm not really sure. Does i7 9th gen make a huge difference in games against i5 9th gen laptop if they have the same GPU, say 1660 Ti? Will this affect thermals too? So yeah, I would expect it to affect thermals. Of course, it depends on what workloads you're running, but if there's anything that's hitting multi-core, absolutely, I would expect it to run hotter. So I can't speak in specifics for this question, and it's really frustrating. Ever since 9th gen launched in, April 2019, I think, I haven't been able to get a single i5 laptop for testing. Pretty much all the laptops I get are i7, which is super annoying, because I know if I had an i5 versus i7 video up last year sometime, it would have just crazy views. Sure, that's nice for me, but so many people ask this question, it would be so much more useful to have a good resource that I know is accurate, that I can refer people to, especially for a question like this. The fact is, I just don't know. I would expect the i7 to be better. The boost speed is only a bit higher, like 100 megahertz in the all-core turbo, I think. So pretty small. It'll really come down to whether or not the game benefits from extra cores. iOS or Android user? I'll have to go with Android because I've got the Pixel 3 XL. I only got this because I smashed up my Nexus 6P pretty bad. And before that, I had a HTC Desire HD. So I've had Android for 10 years now. I had an iPhone once for work since then, but yeah, just prefer Android, personal preference. Which is better, Ryzen 7 3750H with a 1660 Ti 6GB, or Intel i7 9750H with a 1650 6GB? Both have 16GB of RAM. So it's really going to depend on what you're using this machine for. If it's anything that requires CPU power, like rendering or say editing or exporting video, I think the i7 will give you an edge there. If it's for gaming, even though an i5 8300H can comfortably beat the 3750H, that 1660 Ti is still 50% faster than the 1650. So if it's for gaming, definitely the Ryzen, as much as it pains me to say that because the CPU is below an last gen i5, but that 1660 Ti is just going to give you much better performance in most games, I think. Is Nitro 5 with i7 1660 Ti a good choice in its price segment? What's the scope of upgradability in that laptop? So I'm pretty sure the upgradability is very similar to other laptops, like the Nitro 5, so pretty much I think all you can change is the memory and the storage. So as with most of these laptops, CPU and GPU soldered to the motherboard. Oh, you could also change out the Wi-Fi card, that should be possible. So I haven't actually had the Nitro 7 for testing. I've been trying to get one from Acer for months. At this point, pretty much kind of given up because it's just been, forever. I believe it's basically the same as the Nitro 5, just with a metal lid, and that makes it just ever so slightly thinner. So in terms of performance, it's probably very similar to the numbers I show in my Nitro 5 review, because I had that with the i7 and 1660 Ti. So yeah, you could probably refer to that for more details. Are you going to make more monitor reviews? I just noticed they're particularly successful on your channel. Yeah, that's very interesting. When you go and look at my top viewed videos, there's a lot of monitor videos there. I guess people are really interested in budget monitors, particularly for gaming. The content creator monitors usually don't do so good, so I guess a lot of people are searching for gaming monitor reviews. I do actually have some more coming. I think I'm getting a 75Hz BenQ monitor and some new one from MSI. Can't really remember the model names off the top of my head. But yeah, there are more coming. As for why they're so well viewed, I don't think they bring in a lot of subscribers to the channel, probably because I'm not a monitor channel. And to be fair, there are a lot of other better channels out there that cover that cover monitors, like Tim at Hardware Unboxed. He does an extremely good job. Makes my monitor videos look like crap, to be honest. But yeah, I'll probably keep doing some occasional videos here and there on the monitors that represent good value for gamers because, well, they do pretty well, and I'm interested in testing out new monitors because I'm always interested in using new screens. Like the ones I've got here at the moment probably aren't the best. I would like an upgrade. So yeah, even just personally, it's good for me to get new monitors in and just test them out, see how they go, and then I can decide if it's something I want to upgrade to myself at some point. I've seen a lot of complaints about Razer laptops. Some have USB issues and fan issues. What's your take on that? Should you buy a Razer laptop? So I kind of addressed this in the previous question. Basically, it's really hard for me to test these things out long term and find these issues. When I tested, well, I don't think I've had any serious problems with any of the Razer laptops that I've tested. So I can't really comment on this too much. But from what a lot of people have been saying online, that it does seem like failure rates are higher than others. I mean, I don't have the stats to back that up. And again, all laptops, regardless of who they come from, do have problems. Nothing is perfect. But keeping that in mind, it does seem like people are, having some issues with the Razers. But yeah, no personal experience with that, so can't really go into it in any more details. What are your favorite countries for traveling and how many have you traveled? So I'm in Australia at the moment. I've only gone to New Zealand, US, and Taiwan for Computex. I think I like New Zealand the most. It's just a very beautiful country, looks nice. I've gone there like 3 or 4 times, just even to the same places because I just really like it. Good food, good views, currency conversion from my Australian dollar to theirs is usually favorable for me, so that's nice. Whereas to the US at the moment, it's... Ugh. But yeah, probably New Zealand is my favorite at the moment. What do you do other than YouTube? Pretty much nothing, as sad as that sounds. This is basically my full-time job, and I probably spend too much time on it as is. So yeah, basically just the channel at the moment. What's your favorite gaming laptop? Like among the ones you tested recently, which one would you say is the best value for money and checks all the boxes? Well, it depends what those boxes are. Like, I don't know what else you might be using this machine for and what your budget is. If it's purely for gaming, generally at the $1,000 to $1,200 US price point, I suggest the Acer Helios 300 or Lenovo Wi-Fi 40 with the GTX 1660 Ti, because those are pretty good value. They perform pretty well, decent features, basically just overall good for the money. But if you want like extras, I guess more bells and whistles like good keyboard, larger battery, Thunderbolt, SD card, those kinds of things, then I'm probably looking at something like the Aftershock Vapor 15 Pro here in Australia and Singapore, or Electronics Mag 15 in the US. But yeah, it really comes down to what you're after and what your budget is. Can you review the waifu 5700 XT? Probably not. Pretty sure Steve at Gamers Nexus has already done that one pretty well. I'm kind of looking to get out of dedicated reviews on graphics cards. They just don't perform that well on my channel, and there's a lot of time involved to test one of those out. And I think those guys just do a better job of it than I do anyway. I'm still keen on doing graphics card comparisons, but yeah, as for dedicated reviews, I'll probably start doing less of those, I think. Unless, you guys really want to see that for some reason, then let me know otherwise. The second part of that question, what is the thing you're least excited for? What from what was showed at CES last month? Oh man, a whole month ago. It seems like forever. I mean, I guess you could probably check my CES roundup, wrap-up, whatever video. I probably went through some things there. Oh, off the top of my head, any company that didn't have anything new to show, like... Acer had some new things, to be fair, but in terms of gaming laptops, they didn't really have anything with Ryzen 4000, which was interesting, given things like the Nitro 5 previously have had AMD Ryzen CPUs, but it didn't really seem like they were going ahead with 4000 series. So that was a pretty big disappointment for me, because that would have been good to see. Otherwise, Lenovo didn't have anything either, other than their gaming laptop with, you're supposed to use the eGPU, no discrete graphics. So I guess that's what I'm least excited for. Not really that interesting. What would you recommend cooling your laptop with? Just a simple cooling pad, or are there certain things to consider? So I actually have a really detailed video coming out on this in a week or two, and it's taken me like a year to get all the data for. I mean, I could have done it quicker, but I've been working on it around other projects, and well, basically what I've done is I've tested out 10 different laptops with, so just the laptop on the table, on just a metal stand, on 3 different cooling pads, and with vacuum coolers, and compared the whole lot. So without giving too many spoilers, basically, at least in the cooling pads I tested, they perform essentially the same. I guess they all do the same basic job of lifting the machine up and blowing in a little air. So cooling pad is a pretty good option, but also just raising the back of the machine up gives most of the advantage from what I saw. What do you think? Is it worth the wait to 4th gen Ryzen mobile processors, or can I buy a laptop now with the Ryzen 7 3750H? Look, in my opinion, the 3750H is not great. A last gen i5 comfortably beats it in most workloads. At this point, with Ryzen 4000 so close, I would seriously just wait and at least see how it stacks up. I've got 2 3750H laptops here at the moment that I'm about to retest, so I'll have fresh data to compare with when I get the 4000 series, so hopefully not too far until we know. As for the graphics with 2060 or 5600M, it's really hard to say because the 5600M isn't available yet, so I haven't had a chance to test it. Don't know how that one performs. If it's anything like the 5500M and how that stacks up with the 1660 Ti, it's probably going to use a bit more power than the Nvidia version, but again, have to wait and see for that. Can you do ASUS ROG Zephyrus M GU502 GU model and Razer Blade 15 base model review? So possibly on the Blade, because it's not too difficult for me to get things from Razer, but at this point, I also feel like I might as well just hold off till the 10th gen version, as that's probably like a few months away at this point. How much do you really want me to spend like a whole week testing this machine that's just going to be, replaced by a future version? Probably not a good time investment on my part when I can work on other things. As for the GU502 GU, oh man, look, I've really been trying to get that for ages. Essentially, ASUS don't sell that model in Australia. And, only 4% of my audience is from Australia. Most of the audience is from the US, which I believe that model is sold there. And I've pointed that out to them, but they still don't really seem interested in sending me one from overseas to cover. I mean, it sucks, but it is what it is. For some reason, they just don't have it in my country, and they don't want to ship one over for me to test. I currently have the Helios 300, and I was able to upgrade in terms of Windows version and the latest Nvidia driver. However, I'm hesitant to update my BIOS in this laptop, thinking it might do more harm in my laptop though. So I was going to ask, is updating your BIOS worth it? So it really depends on, I guess, what the update provides. Is there new functionality, improvements, bug fixes, that kind of thing? So depending on who is actually providing the BIOS update, often there might be a changelog, which just basically has a big list of all the improvements that have been made. So it'd be worth having a look and seeing if that's published on the Acer website. It might not be. I think some BIOS updates will have like a text file within like a zip with the BIOS updates, so you might have to download it to find that information. Sometimes there are improvements, like there might be some serious crashing issues you might be having with your machine that the BIOS update could fix. I've seen some BIOS updates, do undervolting out of the box, that kind of thing, so performance improvements are possible. They could adjust things like fan curves, fan speed, temperature limits. Basically, there's a lot of different things that they can do. And generally, if they're providing an update, you would think that the improvements would be good. Probably less likely that you're going to update and things are going to suck and they're going to be worse. I suppose it depends on the machine. But in general, I think you're probably fine to go ahead. I update all the BIOSes pretty much first thing I do when I get these laptops in for review. I've never had any problems with bricking a laptop, that kind of thing. The only time I haven't updated a laptop BIOS is actually with my Gigabyte Aero 15X. So just before I went to CES, I found out that there was an update that came out a few months beforehand or something, and I was like one update behind. Now the changelog that I could see wasn't too clear on what the differences were between what I had and what the new version had. I mean, I didn't go out of my way to look for it, but I did a quick Google search on the new version, and I found some forum thread somewhere of people talking about the update just, resulting in their machine essentially being bricked. You turn it on and it's just a black screen and you can't use it. So because I really needed this machine for CES to edit all my videos, I just didn't bother going ahead with that update. To me, it wasn't worth the risk because I needed the machine essentially every day for hardcore video editing for that whole week, so I didn't bother touching it. But, that aside, where other people have reported issues, I think in general, for the most part, it's usually pretty safe, and you're usually probably going to get some kind of improvements. Do you enjoy your work on YouTube, or just doing it as a source of income? Definitely do enjoy it. I feel like if I didn't enjoy it, I probably wouldn't spend as much time as I do on the channel. So yeah, it's good. I like doing it. Are the only difference between the 1660 Ti and RTX 2060 the RTX features and the price? No. So I actually have a whole video on that. If I remember, I'll leave the link to the card thingy in whichever corner of the video that'll be. So I've done a detailed comparison on it. From memory, basically the 2060 has more CUDA cores. It does run slightly warmer, but I wouldn't let the temperature difference be the main factor that makes me consider the 1660 Ti. I'd just look at price and performance personally and decide based on that. I was wondering if AMD Ryzen 4000 series CPUs and Nvidia GPU being together in a laptop. Could you still use Nvidia Optimus like the Intel CPU? So yeah, there are laptops at the moment that have AMD CPUs and Nvidia graphics, and you can use Optimus there. And even if you have AMD graphics and AMD CPU, there's something there. I mean, I don't know if they call it Optimus. I think Optimus is an Nvidia term. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But yeah, the AMD option does something very similar, where the Vega graphics in the processor will be used for like just viewing windows and stuff. But then when you open a game, the discrete Radeon graphics will be in use there. And continuing the question, is it possible to have mux switch on AMD and Nvidia inside a laptop? So I don't see why it wouldn't be possible, but at the same time, also, I can't think of any examples that implement that. I don't know if that's just because there's less AMD laptops at the moment. Maybe that'll change more with Ryzen 4000. Might just have to wait and see. But yeah, none come to mind at the moment. Let me know if you know of any, because I don't know any. Just curious if the AMD CPU is the same as Intel, or taking a different approach while connecting a laptop display. So there is something I do want to note there. I think there is some difference. I'm just not exactly sure what it is or how it works. So when you have an Intel CPU, Nvidia GPU in a laptop, if you want to do G-Sync, the only way you can do that is if you have the Nvidia GPU directly connected to the screen. So you can do that with a mux switch where you can toggle between Optimus and discrete graphics only, but that's pretty much required in order to do G-Sync with Nvidia. On the other hand, if you have an AMD CPU and, say, Radeon graphics, like with the MSI Alpha 15, which has the 3750H and the 5500M, so that has FreeSync, and the way that works is it's the Vega graphics within the Ryzen CPU which handle FreeSync. So the 5500M will run the game, sends the frames over through the Vega graphics, I believe, and then that goes out to the screen. And it's those Vega graphics which do FreeSync. So you can still get, I suppose, a smoother gaming experience without the need for swapping over to the discrete graphics only, which seems to be the requirement, at least at the moment, for a G-Sync. Sort of related to that question, is there hope for mux all the things? Yeah, I think there is. I can't really talk about it at the moment, but I have seen something that looks promising. You'll have to wait and see. Second part of that question, can we discuss the wattage problem on a lot of laptops and why CPU clocks are not as they say at all when it comes to performance? So I think I did a post about this on the Jarrod'sTech website recently, and yeah, that is a valid point. The post was titled something like why you can't buy a laptop based purely on the spec sheet, and the example I gave was the MSI Prestige 14 and the Prestige 15, because they both have the same Intel i7 10710U or whatever it is, but the power limits are like way different to the point where the performance is significantly different, whereas you would look at the specs, the spec sheets, and you'd go, oh, these have the same processor. I'll get the same performance, right? No, definitely not, because it's just not how it works. Smaller machine, lower power limits, results in lower clock speeds. That's just the way it is. It's really hard, trust me. Like, I'm well aware. I try to do fair comparisons all the time, and I could do so many more detailed comparisons if I didn't have to worry about different power limits in different machines. It's definitely a really annoying factor that I have to take into consideration all the time. And as someone buying a machine, it's really hard to know what the power limits are. I often get asked a lot of questions like, with this specific model of laptop, what wattage does the CPU and GPU run at? And unless I've tested it or someone's documented that somewhere, you just have no way of knowing. Like the RTX 2070 Max Q, I've seen 80 watt variants, 90 watt variants, and even 100 watt variant in the Razer Blade Pro 17. And that's enough difference to make it perform quite a bit different. So yeah, it sucks, and I don't really know what the solution is unless companies come up with some way of either specifying the power limit and how that might relate to performance, or just not segmenting the products based on different power limits. But at the same time, I can't really see that happening, because if you can use the same piece of hardware and change the performance and thermals based just on the power limit, I can see a lot of companies taking advantage of that so that they can have different SKUs. But yeah, it kind of is what it is, I suppose, even though it sucks. Well, that was the last question for the February Q&A. Next Q&A will be in March. I've kind of already got it filmed, but I can't talk too much about it at the moment. You'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, definitely an interesting one, and you won't want to miss it. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you get subscribed.